Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Briana Marbury on the show. Briana, excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to have you as well too. And before we jumped into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Briana so you can hear about all the awesome things that she's been working on. And Briana is the president and CEO of the Interledger Foundation, or ILF, a nonprofit organization committed to expanding digital financial inclusion to vulnerable populations. ILF invests in organizations, communities, and entrepreneurs working towards the shared goal of enabling interoperable and frictionless payment around the globe. In her role, Briana leads the strategic vision of the organization and has grown ILF from a small team of 3 to a workforce of change makers all across the globe. Having firsthand experience in the challenges associated with navigating inequitable and inaccessible financial systems, Briana understands how imperative it is to enable communities with an opportunity to create and lead their own financial futures. In recognition of her work at ILF, she has been nominated as a finalist for Finovate's 2023 Executive of the Year Award and named as a changemaker on the International Black Heritage Month's inaugural list in recognition of individuals disrupting the status quo and advancing inclusions. And some fun facts I found about Briana was that she's from Detroit, but she's lived in many places and was briefly a digital nomad, which I thought was pretty cool. And we talked a little bit, and we're connecting over our being both dog parents. Her dog's name is Seamus, and I have to do any shout out I get the opportunity to talk about any other dog parents. But what I really loved when I was reading an interview, she said something that really stuck with me, where she said inclusion should be an expectation, not an invitation. Every leader in every field benefits from ensuring inclusivity is woven into the DNA of their organization. It is proven across the board that genuinely inclusive organizations perform better. So I love that because that speaks to all the awesome things you're doing. Briana, I appreciate your time. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Yes, I think so, but I think you just captured everything. So
We just dropped the mic from there, right?
yeah.
But no. I wanted to drive a little bit deeper and rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started to do all these awesome things. Tell us your CEO story.
Thanks. So yes, as you said, I grew up in Detroit, and it was just a regular childhood in Detroit, trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. Shortly after I finished undergrad and grad school, I determined that working for a normal just corporation was not best for me. I wanted to work for an organization whose mission I really aligned with. And so I went to work for nonprofits, which is where I've spent the majority of my career. And in doing that work, I came across the Interledger Protocol and Foundation when it was starting. And so when I first found out about it, because I'm not a tech person, Interledger Protocol is a payment technology that I was not familiar with. And my original training is as an accountant. And so I was running finance departments in organizations. And so when it was introduced to me, like, hey, I think you would be perfect for this. It's like, yeah, but I'm not a payments person. I'm not a tech person. But as I was reading about the protocol and its capabilities, I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And so I learned along the way about payments. I didn't have an understanding of payments, but I knew about the issues that existed with payments. So let me tell you a little bit about the Interledger Protocol versus the Foundation.
Yes, please do.
The Interledger Protocol is a payments network that allows you to send money, and the goal is to make it as easy as an email. Right now, you can send me an email. I don't know who your internet provider is, but I know that you're going to get that email right away. So we're trying to do the same thing with payments. And the thing with the Interledger Protocol is that it's currency agnostic, meaning I can send you money from the US to Mexico or vice versa, anywhere around the world, and it does the currency translation for you. The foundation was set up to kind of promote the protocol and let people know about what it is and provide opportunities for people entrepreneurs who are interested in building on this technology.
Nice. I appreciate you breaking that down. And I was actually watching a video of you breaking down I guess the differences between or understanding maybe both of those aspects and how important that is. And I think it's something that I'm gonna just say like sometimes maybe we take for granted. We go through our day, we swipe our card, do whatever it is, we pay online. We
Mhm.
don't realize like first of all like how I guess maybe many of the people listening to this how easy it is for that to happen, but how that isn't the case for everybody, which is why I love all the awesome work that you all are doing.
Yeah, it is definitely not the case for everybody. And if you have relatives in another country, which a lot of us do, you know the pains of trying to send money to another country. Say, for instance, you go on vacation and, forbid that you need to get emergency funds, you're going to recognize how difficult that is. I remember I spent some time down in Chile and my credit card wouldn't work. And so I was asking one of my friends who I was with who paid for something for me, like, okay, what is the equivalent here of Cash App or Venmo? And they're like, what is that? And I
Hmm.
was like, just being able to transfer money, they said, well, we can go to the ATM and get some cash out.
Right.
And so it is definitely something that we take for granted. And depending on where you're sending money to, it can take a long time. It can take 3 to 5 days. So imagine if you have an emergency, you need this money right away. Sometimes you can get the money right away, but it's going to cost you even more.
Hmm.
So it could be up to 20% of the transaction cost if you're sending money to other places. And if you're sending money to relatives who live in, say, a third world country, that makes a big difference in how much funds can help stimulate the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that delay, while it may not seem like like a lot, but like you said, especially if there's that need right there, or even if there's not, just that time is huge. And being able to kind of have that transaction, the money come in, money go out, whatever it might be, that time and extra payment and fees, I guess it might call it, ends up
Yes.
costing a lot more for both all parties involved, really.
Yes, it was. So last year, I believe the figure was in like the 80 billions, but
Wow.
the fees that were incurred were like $6 billion,
Wow.
and that's just going down to Mexico. Imagine if that money was able to either go in anybody's pocket in either direction versus being charged in fees, and that doesn't include the currency translation fees that are sometimes a little bit murky and hard to understand, and you don't realize how much you're actually paying in those currency translation fees.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I love all the work that you all do because again, I think you take things for granted and you're not always aware. But again, that knowledge when used and executed well can definitely end up being power. So I know that's a lot of what you all are doing, within the organization. Could you take us through a little bit more on what that looks like, how you're helping to, I guess, empower, to educate, to make people aware of all the things that are happening?
Yeah, so we usually have an open call for proposal for entrepreneurs, developers. A lot of people think that you have to be an engineer or say an architect to build these things in order to get funding from us, but you don't. You have to just have a plan and be trying to solve an issue in a community that is underrepresented. Right. So, say, for instance, one of the things that we're doing I keep talking about Mexico, we're doing a lot of work in Mexico. They have a lot of rural banks, and the same is true for banks in the US as well. You think of banks as being connected, but they're not. They use the SWIFT system, which is, it was great when it was invented, but at this point, it's a little bit outdated and slow.
Mhm.
But they didn't even have that in Mexico. And so you have all these different rural community banks that are serving communities around them, but they're not connected to anyone else. And so what they did was they took our technology, connected the banks to each other, and then connected the banks to the Central Bank of Mexico. From there, connected them to a bank here in the United States. And so, using that corridor, transferring money between the US and Mexico, and at the same time, bringing down the rates and the time for the transactions.
Nice. I appreciate you, obviously, again, for the work that you all do. But again, really showcasing exactly what that looks like, because I think so many times you find this a lot. I feel like that's where I really love entrepreneurship. And people say, not
Hmm.
only is this a problem, not only that there should be a better way, but they're actually going out to create that better way. It sounds like you're basically helping to empower those people that do say, hey, there can be a solution, there will be a solution, and I will work towards that happening so that they
Yeah.
can make that happen.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Even in the United States, think about some of the communities here, how hard it is to get a bank account, especially if you have had overdraft fees. That overdraft fee you owe that bank, and then it goes around to all the other banks, which makes it very difficult for you to even establish any type of financial digital footprint. So that's one of the things that we're working on as well. We haven't found a partner yet, so that's a great opportunity for any entrepreneur. We haven't found a partner yet or project yet where someone is really working on trying to figure this out. So that is one area that is just ripe for trying to develop something.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's like, not realizing that there's a better way sometimes is a result of that, or the result, or I guess the current
Mhm.
state of where people are. But again, I love empowering people, letting them know about the opportunities that are out there, because it doesn't have to be that way, but it takes a person, idea, vision, whatever it might
Yeah.
be, and compounding upon itself for those things to be solved.
Yeah, there are still in the United States still millions of people who are affected by this issue. So, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was reading your bio, the word that stuck out to me more than anything else was that accessibility. And I think
yeah,
when we're talking about funds and financials and those things that are the fuel for a
mhm,
lot of those ideas, a lot of those, anything that you try to do to some degree is connected to that. I appreciate you in sharing that, and again, fueling that opportunity for that to be a lot more accessible to everybody.
thank you.
Absolutely. So, what would you consider to be what I like to call your secret sauce? This could be for yourself, the organization, a combination of both. But what do you feel kind of sets you apart and makes you unique?
Uh, for our organization, I believe our secret sauce is the fact that you don't hear about many tech organizations who are also nonprofits who are also like giving grants to people. When I say giving grants, we're not asking for the money back, we're just giving money to people to try to make financial digital services more accessible to everyone. So you don't hear about that combination, and I think that's something that really sets us apart. Oftentimes people are skeptical, like, what's the catch, like, what are you trying to do? It's like we really just are trying to do good. That's what our purpose is.
Yeah, and it's huge because I think it's something that again you don't sometimes like hear about or have that opportunity to do that. But I think if you're someone who's listening to this, like you mentioned, like there's great opportunities, as you mentioned one there. I'm sure there's many other where you're saying there has to be a better way. Sometimes that's the seed that's planted where you can make that impact. You can create that widget, that app, that foundation, whatever it is that you're building, so that you can solve those problems.
Yes.
Absolutely. I love it. So, I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I want to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So, this could be a little bit more of an app, a book, or even a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Something that makes me more effective, I believe, is just keeping up with everything that's going on. So never never becoming complacent with with the status quo in this world. It's in this tech world, it's just so much that's going on and so much that's ever changing that you can't become comfortable. You have to keep looking at what's the newest technology, who's working on something, how can you partner with other people and leverage what they're doing in addition to what you're doing to try to make a bigger impact. So I think, you know, for me, just sitting back like, okay, we've had this established, we're good. That's just not an option.
Yeah, it's that hunger, that insatiable hunger to be able to continue to kind of, I think when you're fueled by the mission and the why, I usually say you
Mhm.
get more attached to the why than the how. Sometimes the how is not always clear, but if you have that why, you have that insatiable hunger, continue to kind of find those solutions and continue to kind of be abreast of like all the changes and updates.
Definitely. My team, it's funny. They're like, Briana, okay, which do you want to do this, this, and this? I'm like, yes. Like, wait,
Oh,
we have to narrow it down. You're trying to do too much. I'm like, we can do it all. But
yeah.
you do have to find a balance. But yes, I just am eager to do all of these things because I passionately want to make this work. I grew up in Detroit again, and we didn't have access to, say, banks. And I personally experienced how not having financial access put me behind, say, my peers who were under different circumstances. And so that's one of the reasons why this is just a passion project for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love when you get have obviously you have that passion project and you're able to marry that with the impact. And just as you said, I think it honestly speaks to like that abundant mentality where you don't have to choose either or, you can choose both or check all. I think in the check all box that's at the very bottom. But I appreciate you talking about, so much. I think we zoom over, we think about the finances, the money, of course, that's a place, but we sometimes forget about what I like to call that human aspect of business, human aspect of life, of like what those financials, what being able to make sure you're reducing those fees or transfer money timely, how that impacts the world and the people in it. And I think sometimes we can gloss over that.
Absolutely. If you think about someone, like I said, is in that situation where you don't have access to a bank account and you have to go, say, to your corner store to cash your check, and you're already living paycheck to paycheck, and then they're charging you, 5, 10% just to access your money. Imagine what that 5 or 10% can be used for. That can be gas, that could be groceries, that could be used for a lot of things, even starting a savings account. So it's a lot of different things that and it's I say this all the time, and you hear this around the whole payments world, is that it's expensive to be poor, and it's
Mhm.
really predatory and it's unfair. Why should people who have less have to pay more? It's just not right.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, there can be a better way, and I love that you're helping to fuel that. The word that kind of came to my mind were options and alternatives, and it seems like in a lot of those, it could be communities, it could be cities or even countries as well too. It doesn't
Yes.
sound like there are alternatives or options. It kind of you have that path, and that's a lot of what you all are doing is, I guess, presenting people with better alternatives and even alternatives at that. There probably aren't even any there so that they can do something else.
Yes, definitely. There have been people over the years, especially since the pandemics, who have come up with different solutions. Say, in some countries in Africa, mobile money has been something that's taken off where you can use your phone to transact with each other. The issue with those are that they are siloed networks, meaning you have to transact with people within that particular organization. But what we do is try to make interoperability among systems because, say, for instance, they don't have Cash App in Chile. But if we had Cash App and had another system in Chile that was on the Interledger Protocol, you would be able to transact with each other without having to get the other person's app that might not be available in that area.
Absolutely, and I love that. And I don't know if this is the right word, and I hear it a lot around like different types of payment is like the decentralization where it doesn't isn't in one. Is that accurate in saying like it's not has to be through I guess this company or this software or
Yes,
whatever it is? It sounds like that's what you guys are doing as well.
absolutely. Decentralized finance. Yes.
Awesome, I love it.
Where just one person isn't or one organization isn't at the hub or the center of it, and you have a connection of all these different networks that are able to communicate with each other, and no one is left out.
Yeah, absolutely. No one's left behind, no one's left out. And I think that you reduce the likelihood of having those predatory terms or, whatever it is
Yes,
that don't benefit, I think, the common cause or the ability for people to be able to kind of maximize, their finances, maximize that opportunity to be able to kind of get further ahead than they may be at the time.
exactly. When you have more options, then those predatory practices tend to go away because they can't remain competitive.
Right. Absolutely. Perfect. So I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would hop into a time machine and tell your younger business self, or it's potentially one of these entrepreneurs that are listening to this, you might give them advice as well too.
So you touched on it a little bit earlier. It's about following your passion. When I became an accountant, it wasn't because I'm like, oh yeah, I love, numbers. I love this. I love the complexity of it, but I did not have a passion for accounting. And I've come across a lot of people who are like, I just want to make money. I want to be a leader. It's like, be a leader in what? Make money in what? Because if you're not happy in what you're doing, if you're not passionate about it, it's just going to be empty. So I think a lot of people talk about, finding your passion, but really, if you are working in an area that you just don't care about and it's just all about money, then, you're not going to be able to find as much success as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions. I imagine that you feel the same too, of like what success is. And like success is not all sunshine and rainbows and just being successful. A lot of times it's some really difficult valleys, peaks, and everything
Yeah.
in between and all around. And sometimes it's that passion, the why of what's fueling you is the only thing that kind of keep you going. But I think so many times if we just say, oh, I just want to be a leader, or I just want to, be a seven figure or a six figure, whatever figure you're saying, sometimes we are missing the opportunity to really fuel our dreams with the things that we're so emotionally charged about that it will get us through the good times, the not so good times, and everything in between and all around.
That is exactly right, because I have some hard days. There are some hard
Yeah.
days, but at the end of it, I'm like, we're doing something really great. We're doing something good. I can see how it is having a positive impact on people, and that is what makes me continue. It's not what I see in my bank account, at when I get paid. It is the impact that we are having on people and how we are trying to solve for this worldwide issue.
Absolutely. And let me ask you this, when you heard about the opportunity, I feel like you touched on this as well too. Was it having that strong passion, which you mentioned that you didn't necessarily have that tech background? Was it because of that passion that was that magnet that it fueled you to say, yes, I'll take this opportunity and really run with it from there?
Yeah. I so I'm going to be honest. It took me a while to figure out what the protocol was, because
Yeah.
originally the website was just for developers. And so I had to
Okay.
spend hours trying to figure out what it was. And once I did, I said, oh my goodness, this is amazing. How come everyone isn't using this? And so I had been at organizations where people called because they were not able to get their money overseas. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, payments get lost all the time and you have to reprocess them. But because of the agreements between the banks, they're like, okay, we trust you, but this is going to take an additional 3 to 5 days to go through. Well, people are crying like, my landlord won't wait 3 to 5 days. I need my money now. Like, I have expenses that I have to have now. And so I experienced that, and to know that the Interledger Protocol can do transfers almost instantaneously. It was like, this is amazing. Little did I know that there's just so many different intricacies involved when you're talking about transferring funds, especially between countries. But that's something that we're working on figuring out how to do.
Yeah, I love it, and it definitely sounds like an absolute game changer to be able to kind of make that happen for so many organizations or people and people within those organizations as well too. And I love the fact that I always feel like it's and I don't know if you feel the exact same way, but it's a sign of really being an expert and really knowing your craft when you're able to kind of demystify sometimes the complexity to be able to simplify so that people can understand. And I feel like it sounds like you went through that process and maybe even are still going through that process where you're able to bridge that gap because you have an understanding of exactly what it is, but also able to communicate it to those that maybe even don't know what it is and need to know exactly what's
Yes.
happening.
Yes, it is a continuous process to try to get people to understand, and how can I make this easier to understand. And then the other thing is the further you are into it, the more you start talking technical about it. People are like, what? And you have to, okay, I need to reframe this. So definitely good to keep that top of mind. But thank you for that, because that's something that I am concerned about a lot. Because if people don't understand it, how are they going to use it? Or how are they going to, amplify it?
Yeah, absolutely. And how are they going to obviously like create these solutions that are needed
Right.
to be able to solve these problems without knowing exactly or understanding exactly what those problems are? So,
Okay, I'm going to put you to the test. You tell me now
mhm.
what. No, I'm just joking.
Okay. They'll play my pop quiz afterwards. So there we
Yeah,
go. I'll be prepared. As long as
yeah.
it's open book, I'm good. I want to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Brianna, what does being a CEO mean to you?
It means that you have to embody a vision and be able to amplify that to the world and have people buy in to what your vision is. It means a lot of responsibility. I am responsible for a staff of over 30 across the world. And so just really having them understand and feel like they have a part in what the organization is. Just being able to realize the vision of an organization, that's what I think a CEO's job is.
Nice. I love that perspective and, empowering ability and, or amplify, I'm sorry, and then responsibility are such powerful words. And I hear that even in your journey as like, once you started to dig in, you started to understand, you felt like you had that responsibility to make that impact so that you can amplify those organizations and the people, the entrepreneurs that want to make that impact. And of course, being able to empower them with the finances and probably the knowledge as well, too, to be able to make that happen. So I could definitely see how that is intertwined in all the steps along your journey, and it sounds like the things that you do as well too.
Yeah, I definitely try to keep that top of mind.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I want to do now is pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know, and of course, how best people can get a hold of you, find out about you, your team, all the awesome things that you all are doing.
Yes, so please follow us on all the socials. We're on LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and interledger.org. We always have opportunities open for call for proposals, whether that is you want to submit for a grant, you are passionate like we are about this and want to spread it as an ambassador across the community. So we are on all the channels. You ever have any questions, info at interledger.org. We have a huge tech team and a community of people who are also passionate about this that can help along your journey.
Absolutely. Well, I truly appreciate that. Of course, to make it even easier, we're going to have the links and information as well in the show notes so that everybody can follow up with you. But I appreciate you obviously taking time out today, but even more the work that you do, because I think again there's not as much awareness and knowledge around what's happening. But I appreciate the passion, the drive, the determination, the execute, all the things that your team is doing to make that happen. And I think it's only important. It's really important for us to take this information, take this knowledge, and run with it as well too. So thanks so much for making that easy for us today, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you. You as well.